Hi Varun, thank you so much for being on the show. It's absolute pleasure having you on the show.
I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm
Yeah,
intrigued to know what all we're going to talk about. It's always fun to do podcast episodes where I'm the guest, so I can look
yeah,
forward to some interesting conversations.
yeah. Same is the case with every creative individual, I guess. So, ever since I got to know that I'm going to do a podcast with you, I started to take my gymming sessions and my diets altogether very seriously and sincerely. Uh, Reason being that I know that being an ectomorph, it's not at all easy to maintain your body muscle and being convenient towards your diet and consistent
Yeah.
as well. So, being an ectomorph comes with a lot of disadvantage, but I'm a person who likes to focus on positives. So, if we want to
Mm.
dive into the biological algorithm, then I would say that being an ectomorph kind of increases the percentage of twitch fiber muscles in your body,
Mm.
and also it kind of follows you with narrow muscles, which I feel like is very disturbing after a point of time. So I want to ask you that throughout this whole phase of pandemic, how have you been keeping up to your own standards of a healthy body?
So actually, in a weird way, I've discovered my own standards of a healthy body during the pandemic. I kind of feel because I'm an ectomorph as well. Right? I've constantly struggle with trying to retain muscle. I think what people don't understand is that they believe that, it's always like, oh, you can lose weight easily. That's so
Mhm.
lucky. And I wish I had your problem is what I've heard. I think a large part of my life, but it's
Yep.
more about retaining muscle. You can become that really thin person with
Mhm.
a paunch if you're not too careful. Um, but I think over the last couple of years, I've started to focus a lot more on functional workouts and stuff. So thankfully, um, I found a way to continue my fitness regime in post lockdown, where you had to work out from home, and um, I really then tried to experiment with different kinds of work. So tried out high intensity some days, tried out this is thing called RFT, which is raw functional training, and did a bunch of that. Tried boxing between, continued doing weights whenever and eventually sometime I think late last July I ended up buying a few dumbbells when e-com opened up a little bit. But it's really been a journey of iterations of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, finding that mix in a week. And I'm talking more workout because diet happened much later. I've never really focused as much on diet because to a large extent I'm not a person who eats fried food. I'm not like overt fried food eater. I can eat regular fried food, but nothing like deep fried and stuff like that. And I've
Yep.
been a big fan. Also, not necessarily a big eater. I'm more a eat how much ever I feel like, and some days that's more, some days that's less. So it's never been a big struggle. But I'd say that sometime early this year is when I started to look at what I'm eating. Right, so it became a mix of initially saying, what can I do to stay functionally strong? Because are you sitting on a chair for so long? I have a daughter, and at one of the shifts for me from I'd say your traditional workouts, go to gym, do chest tricep on one day, do back bicep. That
Yeah, yeah,
standard thing you
yeah,
always get.
yeah.
To move from that to functional happened after I had a daughter because I realized that if you want to be an effectively active parent, you had to be fit. So, and the fact that I can now carry her around for like a longer period of time than I could have when I think I had like slightly more bulging biceps and stuff like that. So that's really been what I've done. I've just focused on variety. I think variety stops you from getting bored, but also keeping some systems in place of how long a day you're going to give for workouts, how long a day are you going to focus on this.
Mhm. So as you told that parenting is one of the most complex jobs in the planet. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to anticipate a lot, and
Yeah.
down the line, you also need to care about your mental health, whether you are
Mm.
not getting can say burned out with your own mental abilities, and you have
Mm.
some time to take out for your family as well. So, how would you describe parenting for any parent who's initially experiencing parenting?
So the one thing and I've said this to many of my friends or people I know who become parents and after I become a parent is that you never told how tough the first 6 months is. And I think that's primarily because I guess in generations prior it was a lot more like the mother would not be working or would take that long extended break, and it was all primarily her responsibility and a lot of that. And I think we also lived in a slightly more joint family setup, so you'd have more people to kind of help out, etc. So I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why it's not as prevalent. But the first 6 months are a struggle because you literally have every part of your day-to-day routine uprooted. Your routine is now focused on a baby who you need to make sure survives the first 6 months. So the first 6 months they're still figuring out the basics, like don't smother yourself with a blanket by going under it, or don't fall off a bed, and all those things which we take for granted as we get older are the things you're focusing on. So you're literally making sure, and for lack of a more refined term, trying to make sure the child is alive for 6 months.
Yeah.
And over that 6 months, the personality starts to develop, and that's when your relationship with your kid kind of grows as well. But I feel that you mentioned mental health, and I think that's important because I think enough people go through this. There is a feeling that you've been uprooted from the world you had and the system and the routine you had because of your kid, but you also do feel a large level of love for your kid. So it's that paradox of you trying to figure out, and it's almost
Yeah.
like your love for the kid versus the
Yeah.
kid having taken away that entire life you two had in many ways, and that battle continues happening in your head. And I feel that struggle is very real in most new parents, and over time you find that balance. Like now for me, Leah's almost going to be 4. So now we have a system, and now I can kind of go out and do a lot of that. First year, you're forgetting about all of that stuff. Anyway, it's not like people have gone out in the last 2 years, but and I think that's important. And more than anything else, you have to be fit for life. Like you can't have creaks and so I remember the instance where one switch went off for me in terms of my entire workout regime was I used to do your traditional strength training, try to beef up and everything else, and I just got tired carrying what a 4 5 month old baby around for more than a few minutes. And Pooja was like, you realize that what's the point of you going to the gym and lifting like whatever bench pressing 50 60 kilos and more if not, and then you can't lift a child. And that's when I started actually study this a lot more. I realized that we always thought high intensity meant just cardio, but once you look at functional and you understand functional training a lot, it teaches you how to move in a way that you can hold positions for a long period of time. Like, can you squat however long you need to? Can you hold something in your arm and just like, if you have to just use a towel and go put your arm up and down many times, at some point your arm's going to start hurting, right? Even if it's a towel, and that's because you're doing it continuously. So you learn mechanics. I think understanding body mechanics really teaches you about which parts you need to work on and which stretches you need to work on, and you start to really like my stretches for me on a daily basis are my core workout focus. I stretch through the day. I've also learned, and this is primarily off Instagram actually. I've learned stretches from a lot of accounts who post different kinds of stretches. So you know which stretch you need to do for what pain. And as you get older, the pains and creaks and stuff like that increase because of just bad posture and generally like bad a lot of movements through your early part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So I had this real personal experience to share with you. So around a year back when I started lifting weights, so what happened was eventually I got confused between progressive overloading and ego lifting. So what happened was once I was doing this bench press with extremely heavy weights. So what happened was eventually while I was doing reps, after I guess 2 or 3 reps, all those weights and along with barbells came down crumbling onto my chest. And on top of that, I was doing it without any spotter. So in case if something goes here and there, so I had no one to help me out with. So I mean that barbell was kept onto my chest, and I raised my hand to one of my friend who was also doing some sort of exercise, and he came rushing towards me and kind of held me in any manner possible. So I think that was quite embarrassing for me because after that I had all the people in my gym looking and staring at me as if I have committed a crime. So I mean, I want you to explain that during the initial phases of any person who's just gone to the gym, how should he segment his workout in a manner where he should not get driven towards ego lifting?
You make a very important point, right? And I think ego lifting is also a part of what I call the gym bro culture. Is that you're seeing someone really benching,
yeah,
and those screams and those. Sorry.
and the basic emphasizement or the basic point why do guys do these things is because they look around and they find a lot of buffed guys around them. So they think like that all these things can be, can be taken out within a night or within a day or within a week. So means they don't want to be consistent and they're just willing to push any way possible. So yeah, coming back to question.
Yeah, so it's important also because in trying to quickly lift heavier, you end up not learning the fundamentals as much. Like I
Yeah.
feel in the last year, I've in many ways worked towards really refining my squat, for instance. Right? A squat
Yeah.
something we take so like
Yeah.
I think it's a squat, we know how to do it, but
Yeah.
you don't realize where your knees go. That knees shouldn't protrude too far in front. And then you read that the knees thing also isn't necessarily 100% true because everybody's legs are different, but you need to
Yeah.
have some form of matrix. And the
Mm.
more you do body weight, and I think everybody needs to start off by just doing body weight.
Yeah.
Learn most exercises body weights. Don't go above a 5 kilo dumbbell. To be honest, like for a large part of of I think even this year, except for now when I'm going through this, like I also kind of changed my workout regime. So I'm going through this phase. I'm actually going heavier with weights for
Yeah.
the next 3 months, and then I'm again going to go high intensity and low weights.
Yeah.
But 5 kilos is great. The amount you can do with 2 5 kilo dumbbells, you don't need anything else, if not lower. Sometimes I sometimes use 2.5 kilo dumbbells and I'm just doing like a boxing workout and stuff like that.
Mm.
But to really focus on the fundamentals, you need to get a few things right. You need to get your squat right. You need to get your hinge, which is how you do a deadlift, because some of
Mm.
the biggest injuries, and I've had two, thankfully not so severe. It was more muscle strain than an injury. So very early on, I had a rotor cuff issue years ago when I first joined the
Mm.
gym here.
Mm.
And again, just working out like how you think you know how to work out. Okay, I'll just follow
Yeah.
a sequence of things, and suddenly you feel this pain on your in your shoulder every time you move it around, right? Every time you rotate it. And thankfully, a trainer there kind of helped me around that, where he just kept telling me the exercise I should do, what order I should do it in, so I would still be able to work out and not lose muscle mass while still not straining that shoulder. But
Yep.
that's where it started off, and that's when I started to stretch a lot more. I would normally never, I think we have a problem because in PT class in school you
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
learn like those aren't really stretches; those are just like basic move. I think it's only a warm up or a
Mm.
movement, right? I
Mm.
think that somewhere we need to start learning stretches a lot earlier,
Yeah.
because you can really understand how your muscles work. You also know where your tweaks are.
Mm.
How your elbows move differently from someone else, and so that's what you start with. Start with the squat. Start with a push up. Start with a hinge, which is how you do a deadlift. So you'll also learn how to kind of arch your back and how to
Mm.
keep it flat in some cases. So focus on those movements. Look in front of a mirror, record it if you have to. But once you get those right, is when you start graduating towards weights. And and to anyone who says, okay, but if I'm doing that, doesn't seem like I'm doing much.
Mm.
What you should do is you should sequence it out. Find any of these high intensity resistance training exercises, for instance. You get sequences, you
Yeah.
can find them online and follow that. By the time you hit weights, you will do weights a lot easier
Mm.
because you have your form. Your forms almost become something that you can do in your sleep. So
Mm.
you will automatically move a certain way. Like I know squat, like you know how to sit in a chair. I know I will sit in a certain way because I've kind of worked towards my squat so much. So you will scale up your weights a lot faster than
Yeah.
someone who's starting off on day one with this. So it's almost like the difference between the tortoise and the hare in that story we had as
Mm.
kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost that way. So you will get there, but you will be far fitter, and you will in many ways feel stronger. There's a difference between looking bulky and being strong. Some of the strongest people you will see aren't necessarily bulky, because they generally have strength, and developing strength is very different from developing just like chiseled muscles. They're not even correlated in some
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, again, want to come back to the professional realms. I
Mm.
mean, I know in the year 2009 you started this company known as Glitch. So
Mm.
what I want to know is that what was going on in your mind prior to 2009? Like, how did you anticipate it in order to build a brand like Glitch?
Oh, to be very honest, there was no plan. We
Mm.
were Me and Rohit, were friends since postgrad. We both studied in Symbiosis and Pune together. Came to Bombay to intern. He was interning at Channel V. I was interning at MTV. I later moved from MTV to Channel V because we both joined both those places with our first jobs as well. And around the time in Channel V was decided to stop playing music and becoming a youth entertainment channel, like more serials and stuff like that. We both just wanted to see if we could do something else. There was no plan. We spent 6 months trying to think of the name. To be honest, we went through too many names in those 6 months. Then we had like a month and a half to figure out what we were going to do. It was post recession, so I think the good part of that period was that we just said, okay, there are some things we want to do, but we know there's some things we have to do. So we didn't say no to projects. We just wanted to focus on getting, at least in a quarter, let's try and get one project we really wanted to get. And the rest of the time, let's just focus on getting any project that will pay the bills. So we did everything that came our way. Like we made show reels for actors who wanted to go to Hollywood. We made logos for people. We've shot radio interviews way back in the day where if a celebrity would come to a radio station, we'd go shoot that, edit it for them. Anything we could get. Promos for Disney DVDs at that point of time as well as stuff we used to do. But in between, we would try and sell some digital activations, sell something that would be an interactive video. So we just wanted to go out and do the stuff we thought would be fun to do in terms of, okay, digital is a scaling space. We both understand how it is to work with brands because working in a channel meant you had to do enough brand integrations, figure out all of that. And both of us were people who the marketing teams in channel, we actually weirdly enough would turn to and say, this is a brand we've tied up with. What do you guys think? How could we do this? Because we would come up with fun ways to integrate, even though we weren't necessarily that senior, but we just had fun with it. And most people looked at it as, oh, I don't want to do anything with brands. I just want to create the show I want to create or the promo I want to create. But we would generally have fun with the brand part. And so we thought, okay, maybe we can do this by ourselves. But we didn't really have a plan. We just wanted to survive, make enough money for whatever expenses we had, but try and do stuff which we thought would be fun to do and take it almost like a year at a time. Honestly, it became a month at a time initially because I think by the second month we didn't have any work. And thankfully a few projects came in, but that's literally how we did it. We didn't, and that's actually how we've done it since then. We look at it a year or 6 months as a plan for ourselves. We never overplan because the world is so dynamic, especially in this space, that you can't say, oh, I have a 5-year plan. I mean, think of anybody who had a 5-year plan before 2020 happened, right? All those go for a toss. So you need to have like a 6-month to a 1-year plan. 1 year is better. In some categories, you might even have to go down 6 months, but that's how we plan. We look at every year, saying, what, how do we evolve as a company? So from a production unit to a digital agency to a full-fledged 360 creative agency over the last 12 years, primarily because every year we sat down and said, what do we keep? What do we change? What do we add? And that's really how we've evolved.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a management student and I kind of understand that making adjustments and improvisations should be a necessity behind every brand because the world is changing at a staggering pace. So you never know that what technology is going to come in the next 5 years. So in this technologically advanced world, I feel like that improvisation and adjustments should become specifically the buzzword in the coming years. That is what I feel like. So
agreed.
I mean, again, coming on to the personal realms, again, I have something to share. So what happened was initially when I was introduced to social media and all, so I had one of my friends using Instagram. So he suggested me with this Instagram thing. And so what I did was initially that I dived into the pit of empty scrolling. And I was not at all aware that where I was going. And right now, when I'm down the lane of becoming a creative professional or an individual, I feel like somewhere that idea of empty scrolls is slowly and gradually fading away. So I mean, I want you to explain this whole phenomena of empty scrolling and how can a person get a call or an alarm into his mind when he is going down that track.
So there's been a lot of study around this, and I think especially last couple of years because you spent so much more time, and because the only avenue we had to look outside our houses was to look at our phones, right?
Yeah.
And you tend to scroll through, and there's been a lot of study on this in terms of how we get a dopamine rush every time
Mhm.
we scroll, and that rush keeps us excited, so it keeps going, but also drains our energy in many ways.
Mm.
But you just don't realize how much it is pushing. It's like it's like having some caffeine, like how I'm having a cup of coffee
Mm.
right now, or any of that. It's just giving you that rush. The problem is as human beings, our bodies require surges of dopamine, but also require rest
Yeah.
periods.
Mm.
Our solution to saying, okay, I'm taking a break from work is to pick up our phone. So you're going from one dopamine piece to another dopamine piece. You're not giving your brain any break. So
Yeah.
um, there was this thing I heard sometime back, which I really like to say, that we've forgotten how to be bored,
Mm.
because whenever
Mm.
we're bored, we pick up our phone or we pick up a
Mm.
device, or switch on something we're streaming. But it's always that whole aspect of things. And what we need to kind of think about is, when you are feeling yourself endlessly going there, you will feel that strain in your eyes, in your mind.
Mm.
If you're not sleeping well, for instance, many of us end up scrolling before we go to bed. Because of that, you don't sleep well.
Yeah.
You wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is pick up your phone. So you imagine your mind's woken up. Think of it like a car. If you're switching on your car and going straight to fifth gear, that's what you're
Mm.
doing by checking your phone immediately.
Yeah.
So working on some of those aspects can actually, I mean, if you look at it from that lens, you realize that there are some moments you need to give your mind some
Mm.
space. There's some moments
Mm.
you need to keep it away from a screen, because it's your eyes are straining, your brain's going that way. The only way you can work on it is realizing that most phones now, thankfully, do have a screen time counter.
Yeah.
I never paid attention to it, but I would say in recent years I have looked at it more and more. I realized how much time I spend on certain apps.
Mm.
So while I tried putting limits, for instance, it works for some
Yeah.
people. It didn't work for me because you can always snooze the limit and move
Mm.
ahead.
Yeah.
But I just kept looking at how many hours of screen time I was doing in a week and work towards minimizing,
Mm.
and that's really helped. It's called switching off notifications for certain apps.
Mm.
All social media doesn't require you to have a notification, switch it off. In some cases, maybe email, if you have a system of checking your email, let's say once every hour, which I do, then you can switch off notifications there. But again, that works for some, doesn't work for some. I have the
Yeah.
privilege of being in a leadership position,
Yeah.
so I can't do that.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't do that. So think of the apps that randomly like pop it. You don't need news all the time. You don't need breaking news
Mm.
pop-ups all the time. You don't need to know what is the thing which I keep telling people they should switch off. It's this, yeah. Every single random app you download keeps sending you updates. Like, you don't
Yeah.
need your grocery app to constantly send
Mm.
you updates. You know when you ordered grocery, you will go back and check it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
notification doesn't have to be on all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So if you take all of those out, you are not reaching for your phones with every ding or every vibration.
Mm.
Um, Before you go to sleep, after you wake up, give yourself like half an hour before and half an hour after waking up. Like half an hour before sleeping and half an hour after waking up, where you don't look at a screen. So I've moved to reading physical books, for instance, before I go to bed. So I'll spend time, about an hour at least, reading a book, not picking up my phone before I go to bed. 1 hour in the morning after I wake up, again, while I am looking at a screen because I'm working on something, I'm not consuming content, not looking at notifications, none of that stuff. I spend the first hour of my morning working
Yeah.
on really focused work. And you can flip those around, but just try to make sure you give your brain a breather.
Mm.
And you don't necessarily have to go through a complicated system to figure it out. You will realize it. Your eyes will feel
Yeah.
the strain. Try one day, just like not looking at a screen before you go to bed. Try not picking up your, and it's also, you feel that, I think I even call it anxiety, because if you don't pick
Mm.
up your phone first thing in the morning, you feel that itch in your hand. You want to pick
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah.
But take it slow. Okay, 15
Mm.
minutes I'll wake up, I'll go brush my teeth, do whatever I have to do, and then I'll pick up my phone. So it's, I think
Mm.
that 15 minutes can do a lot in just like,
Mm.
there was this concept I think I shared in my newsletter sometime back. It was called ego depletion.
Yeah.
And I found that to be a fascinating concept, because it says that your mind is like a battery. When it
Mm.
wakes up in the morning, it's in full charge. And as
Mm.
you go through the day, the charge goes down, which is why in the evenings you're a lot more tired. Your tendency to eat a lot more food,
Yeah.
junk food, just binge a lot is
Mm.
always in the evening, because you're almost what controls you put on yourself
Mm.
have gotten weaker. So
Yeah.
the evenings are the trickiest time to follow that. So ego depletion is basically signifies that. So how do you combat that? You can combat that
Yeah.
by trying to sleep a little earlier, not doing as much heavy work in the night, or you give yourself enough breaks during the day, even if it's about 15
Mm.
minutes between meetings. give yourself a
Mm.
half an hour. They actually say that if you can take a 1 hour nap in the afternoon, which is very funny because that's what people have done for years, and
Yeah.
only I think the last two generations have skipped
Mm.
that. Has that become a strong enough? Has that gone away as a practice? But that again helps you. Like it reboots your brain in that sense. So yeah, all these are methods you can use, but you need to find what works for you and for your life.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. So I read this quote somewhere. I want to put it over here. I don't know whether it is relevant or not. If I'm wrong, then please do correct me. So
Mhm.
I read it like every art earns its meaning through its constraints. Music that goes on forever becomes noise. So I think
Mhm.
whatever art you are doing, it needs a foundation over it, because
Mhm.
after a point of time, if it's made in a continuous manner, then definitely the price of it is eventually going to fall down. So as I said,
Mhm.
that every art earns its meaning through its constraints. So I don't know
Yeah.
whether this was relevant to this or not.
It is very relevant, but I just changed the word from constraint to saying system. If you build
Yeah.
systems into your life, and I mean, obviously, you read about systems. If I mean, anyone's read Atomic Habits, which James Clear wrote,
Hmm.
you see, and most of the books you'll see in this space talk about a system because it's basically saying, and what is a system? It's a routine, right? What do you do in the morning? What do you do in the evening? So
Yeah.
for instance, I write early in the morning because I can do focused
Hmm.
work. I don't need
Hmm.
to collaborate with anyone to do that writing work. Most times I either record my podcast in the afternoon or the evening. So
Hmm.
I've over time built certain slots during my day, during my week to do specific things. That does a few things. One is it takes away the strain of trying to figure out when you're going to do what, but also
Hmm.
makes you look at, okay, every evening if I'm going to say I'm going to binge, let's say a streaming platform, but you made
Yeah.
sure that you say I'm going to spend an hour reading,
Hmm.
and you look at it saying you can look at it as a constraint, but also it's a system. You're saying this is something I really want to do. So like I don't watch as much streaming content as I used
Yeah.
to, right? Because I know I'm going to read every night.
Yeah.
I am going to write every morning. I am going to write my newsletter every Friday afternoon,
Hmm.
or record, let's say, a bunch of my Varun Dugi show episodes on a particular Sunday, two Sundays a month. So in that sense, I also work towards saying, "Okay, these are slots I've already booked for this. So if I have to do something else, it has to be done in other slots in the day. The same way goes for work.
Hmm.
You put
Yeah.
your calendar is generally filled up with work stuff, and
Hmm.
what's left is this. So
Hmm.
as long as you do that, and because the worry with using the word constraint, sometimes people take it negatively, but I don't think constraints are
Yeah.
negative. They're actually very positive if you put them in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 100%. So, I mean, I heard your podcast on imposter syndrome and I was
Mhm.
completely blown away by that. And also, I recommended it to some of my friends and they really enjoyed it. So, I mean, I want you to talk across imposter syndrome and how is it clinically affecting this new age?
So in most cases, right, if you talk to, and this is one of the most prevalent mindsets, because it's that feeling of when you enter a room and you feel like, oh, I don't know enough. People are going to call me out for not knowing enough, or
Mm,
if you're getting on stage and you want to present an idea, but somewhere in your head you're like, okay, what if someone catches the fact that
mm.
I'm not an expert in this, I'm just winging it.
Is
And there are
that
many of those.
is that
Sorry.
that that insecurity that kicks in every time?
Yeah, it kicks in, right? Because you cannot be 100% prepared,
Yeah.
and you do feel at some point that you feel nervous about the fact that someone's going to say, why are you the right person to answer this question,
Yeah.
or how do you know so much, do you know about this, and you might not know the answer. And
Mm,
the worry we have in our heads of failing or falling flat on our face makes us feel like imposters, because no matter how much we try, we aren't going to be 100% experts. It's not possible for anybody to be 100% expert. But because we have to, on one spectrum, you're winging things because we
mm.
all have a tendency to wing things and not prepare entirely enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the other end, you're also worried about how the world perceives you. You're
Mm.
worried about how people around you will perceive you. You worry about, and in a weird way, even the spotlight effect comes in, right? You always feel that when you enter a room, everybody's staring at you.
All
It's
eyes
called
on me.
it's called the spotlight
Mhm.
effect, which is
Yeah.
never really true. You
Yeah.
feel like everyone's looking at you. In all cases, nobody might be looking at you, but you feel it because
Mhm.
because as human beings, we look for um what's the right term? We look for a way. We want to feel
Validation.
validated by people.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
look for validation, right?
Bang on.
And that really feeds into this. So imposter syndrome is an interesting one because you worry about being called a fraud.
Yeah.
You, like, let's say for instance, I put a lot of content out around books.
Mm.
I worry sometimes that someone's going to say, okay, do you actually read that much, or are you just putting some stuff out?
Mm.
So I make sure I read. But there are many times when I might put out something from a book which I haven't read.
Mm.
And I realized the trick is the right way to put this out so you don't feel that way is a few things I've built for myself, some stuff which I've learned, some things which I've built for myself, is that one is to be authentic about it. So when I'm putting out a piece from a book which I haven't read, I'll just say it's from an excerpt, right? And I never say it's from the actual book that I've read. So if someone says, no, I said I haven't read it, I found this piece from the book, so I shared it. So I won't get called out. So somewhere at the back of my head, I'm like, I've almost put this mutual funds are subject to market risk kind of a thing
Yeah,
to a
yeah,
statement which I've made.
yeah.
In a similar way, you also need to find ways to map it out. And one of my mapping scenarios, which really has worked for me over the years, there are some things you're very confident about, and there's some things you're worried about being called out as an imposter for. And in some ways, if you put those down, you will realize in many ways the stuff you're very confident about could be things that will help you in the things that you feel like you might be called out as an imposter for. For instance, I'm very confident about having conversations. I'm not so confident about doing presentations. Presentations, I'm always worried that I'll fall flat on my face because I'm not a good presenter, at least in my head. So I try to make all my presentations almost like a conversation with my audience, but never like your typical, I'm just standing on stage and presenting kind. I always feel like I try to pick a few people in the audience, and it's almost like I'm talking to them. And that's a method I learned while I think before I was going to give I've given a few TEDx talks, and before one of them, I read somewhere that that's a good way to do it. Find one or two people in the audience and make eye contact with them, and treat them like the only people you're talking to. And that really works because you're not worried about everybody else. You focus on those one or two people. So find methods like that. And it's especially that scenario now because we are trying to present a version of ourselves on social media. Look at our Instagram feeds, look at the stuff you will tweet out, or anyone's LinkedIn status. On Twitter and LinkedIn, you're trying to seem like the most smart person. You're talking about crypto, you're talking about blockchain, you're talking about the startup space. You're trying to put all those creator economy and everything else. You are in many ways putting out quotes which you have not said yourself. You picked it from the internet, or you found from somebody, putting it there. You're worried someone will call you saying one side, isn't that quote from that famous person which you're suddenly calling your own? And those things make you feel worried. On Instagram, you're trying to really showcase, what do I call it? You're trying to showcase a version of you that you feel will be most appealing to people out there.
Yeah.
You're trying not to show the things. It's a happy place. It's a place you go to see almost what was the thing? It's the Karan Johar version of the world that we're trying to show the world, for lack of a better term or a better reference in that sense. And I feel that is one strong thing. So also people worry so much about how many likes you get. You worry about the comments you are getting here. You know, there's so many worries you have over there. And the only way to combat is to focus on two things. One is to be authentic and honest. So you say, this is what it is. This is how I am. This is how I came across. This is how I said it. Always attribute. If you attribute, you're taking that away. And focus on the stuff you're confident about, and try to make the stuff you're not confident about your confident side by using them as tools. So, like how I mentioned the presentation and the conversation. I've always, weird example, but I don't draw that well. I've always found it interesting. I find it therapeutic to scribble stuff, but I've never been that good at it. So each of my newsletters has something which I scribbled on and I draw. And I've done that because I'm confident about what I write. I'm not confident about what I sketch out, but this helps it in a small way. So I'm not trying to say I'm an artist in terms of drawing something visual. It's somewhere hiding in between my written stuff. So find ways to hide your own insecurities in the stuff which you are confident about. And over time, you will stop feeling insecure about those aspects. And that's the way I look at it.
Perfect. So I think you were trying to talk about symbolizing things, and after symbolizing, you kind of learn things way more easily. So, I mean, I was having this conversation alongside Madam Louise Borden, who's a four-time
Mm,
Olympian. So I asked her this question that, ma'am, whenever you are playing sport on such a higher level, you have eyes of audience all time on you. So what do you
mm,
do to get out of that performance anxiety zone? So she shared very, I think, interesting thing. She said that between the sets and between the timeouts, while I switch away from the game, what I do is I put my hand into the sand and I grip that sand and I start
mm.
releasing that sand, and that kind of gives me a break from all that hassle and bustle that is going inside the ground. So I think you need to
Yeah.
find your own convenient ways in order to take a break from all such things.
Yeah, yeah. That's why people meditate. That's why people not even meditate. I think breathing is such
Hmm.
an underused method to find focus.
Yeah.
And there's this. I use the app Calm not as often as I would want to, but they recently had this one series they put up on Calm, which is LeBron James runs you by a bunch of meditations,
Hmm.
and it's all meditations leading to performance. And it talks about the mindset you kind of build before you go on court, and talks about the mindset you build before you go to sleep. And there are a few things there, and it's really what I liked about the one before you go on court was that he's telling you how you can build the focus of a champion. But if you listen to it carefully, he's telling you about how you can kind of block out the world and
Hmm.
really focus on those one or two things which you are going to do right now. And I think
Yeah.
that's the most important part. Is that
Hmm.
there's this saying in Stoicism, which is one of my favorite sayings. It's literally been my lifeline through the entire pandemic, which has
Yeah.
been that fact that you need to focus on the things that you can control and
Hmm.
not worry about the things that are not in your control.
Control.
And once you
Hmm.
focus on that, you in many ways reduce a lot of your worries, right? Like I can't sit here and worry about how the pandemic is raging because I can't do anything about it. I can focus on, okay, do I make sure that everybody who I am connected with gets a vaccine in any way possible? Work toward that's something I can do. So that's what I focus on. Do I make sure that everybody I know has everything they need to be safe during this period that I can do? If I start to worry about the entire world, which I should be, but there's a very thin line between worrying about the world and letting that worry be the only thing residing in your head.
Hmm.
And we all cross that line. I've crossed that line, especially in the second wave. But you need to go back to this line saying focus on the stuff you can control. And as long as you focus on the stuff you can control, the weight on your shoulders is a lot lesser.
Yeah. All those benchmarks works as a reference point when moving ahead in life.
Mm.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
one last piece of question to end with. I want you to become Mystic Varun for a while. So, I
Mm.
mean,
Yeah.
where do you see this whole age of new podcasters cruising towards? I mean, in the near future, is it going to become a conventional way, or are the brown parents still going to call it a passive way of earning income?
Um, I feel the creator economy and the word economy has got latched on very recently, right? It's
Yeah.
finally allowing for a few things.
Mm,
It's allowing everybody to show that they can make some income out of it. I think it's
mm,
important to look at anything as saying. I was recently, I forgot, I think it was one of my podcasts itself, talking about the difference between an artist and a creator. A
mm,
lot of artists don't want to be called creators because they're like, it's not a business venture, it's something which is a creative
mm,
expression. I feel there's a thin line between an artist and a creator in many ways
mm.
in that sense. And the ability to tell those closest to you and yourself that you focusing on this will give you enough money in the future and even now to survive is very important because it also gives you that level of confidence, right? As much as we all say we do want to be able to make some money out of being a creator, we all do want the validation not just of the audience, but you also want the validation that comes in almost like a tangible form.
Yeah.
And the way this entire space is going, which is away from, okay, I need millions of followers, I need millions of subscribers, to saying I need to have a very clear niche. I'm going to build that into a deep audience. I just need 1,000 true fans. And out of those 1,000, even if 500 of them are willing to pay a certain amount of money every month for my content, for stuff connected to my content, then I can make a living out of it. And the
Mm,
more that happens, I feel that, and parents worry for, parents worry for multiple reasons, right?
mm, mm.
When I decided to, and I think about my own this thing, my parents never pushed me to do a specific thing, but when I couldn't figure it out, they said, okay, maybe do engineering. which is what I tried to do and eventually finished after a very long period of studying engineering.
Yeah.
But when I did want to, for instance, start a company, uh, they all have the same apprehension. They're worried that you'll fail. They're worried that something that you do will affect your career in the long run, and stuff like that. Like I took a job in a call center at one point of time, very early on, before I even moved to Bombay. Parents were worried that I was putting myself into something that would be a dead end job, and
Yeah.
I could do so much more. So I think being a parent now makes me understand parents a little better.
Yeah.
But as this becomes an industry, which it has, and people are seeing that there are ways to make money out of it, that question will go away. However, in the podcasting space, I feel podcasters will go into a couple of directions. One is they'll either they're almost becoming the creators of larger scale stuff in the future, right? Today, if I have a podcast, which is a great fiction podcast, if that's going to become a series on a video streaming platform tomorrow, I could easily be the executive producer for that or a writer for that. On the other end, if I am a learning podcast today, I could maybe build a course. I could maybe build a lot more content around it. So the lines between what's a YouTuber, what's a podcaster, who does a written piece, who does an audio piece, that's going away. We're trying all these things together, but it's making it a lot more individual focused than in an institution focused. I think that's really important. Is that as individuals we hold power now to be able to create money for ourselves and to create careers for ourselves and not rely on institutions. Because before, if you wanted to put anything out there, imagine a podcast without the internet, right? You would have to go to a radio station, convince them that this is a show you want to do. In most cases, it will be shows they want to do, which you can maybe host. So you'll have to work there, and hopefully at some point you can suggest something. Like I remember when I worked in television, there was something which I really wanted to do. So I would constantly go and try to convince them that we should do this kind of a show too. 9 or 10 times that show would not happen, right? And one time that would get eventually blended in because there's so many people involved in it. Whereas today, if you want to do a show about something specific, you can create it and you can find ways to monetize, because all platforms today are building one thing, which is finding ways to make sure creators can make money off their content, because they know that today the creator holds the cards. The creator can say, 1 second, Instagram's giving me a better deal than YouTube, I'll move to Instagram. Or Spotify will give me a better deal than going to, let's say, an Amazon Music, I'll go to Spotify. So the creator holds the cards. And when the creator holds the cards, the creator then can say, I want these features, I want these ways to and these tools to make money, and that's where the future really is going.
Yeah, I completely got it. I mean, quite rational as well. So thank you for being on the show. I think I've got all my questions answered, and even my personal questions as well that I was carrying from a really long time. Thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing all the piece of wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I must tell you this, that this has been one of the most interesting podcast chats I've had, because you touched on topics which I feel need to be touched on a little bit more often, which we don't talk about enough. And I think they really do affect. And it's not just about older, younger. I think everyone goes through these and everyone needs to learn these things. And I must tell you, fabulous set of points to have had a conversation on.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is all me. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you so much.